The Great Alien War Council sat inside the command hall of their flagship. The walls were lined with glowing blue panels that pulsed like living veins of light, and the air hummed with the low vibration of advanced engines that could carry them across the galaxy. In days, the leaders of the Empire were gathered around a massive circular table made of black crystal, and every seat was taken by an alien whose armor shone with gold and silver patterns, showing their rank and victories in countless wars. They had fought for centuries and conquered dozens of worlds without losing even one battle. Their technology was unmatched. Their weapons fired streams of plasma, hot enough to melt rock, and their shields could block energy blasts strong enough to vaporize a mountain. And now, they believed that Earth would be nothing more than another easy mark on their long list of conquests. In the center of the chamber stood the human envoy, dressed not in armor or ceremonial robes, but in a plain dark uniform, his hands clasped behind his back, his face calm and unreadable. He had come alone to speak before the alien rulers and to warn them of the mistake they were about to make. But the moment he showed the presentation of Earth's weapons, the laughter began. Alien voices echoed through the chamber, sharp and mocking, as they pointed at the images of rifles, cannons, and tanks that used bullets made of metal instead of glowing beams of energy. They called the weapons toys for children. They compared them to sticks and stones. They asked how humans could possibly believe they stood a chance against plasma rifles and fusion bombs. One alien commander leaned forward, his mandibles clicking with amusement, as he said, "These are weapons from a cave world. You are a primitive species trapped in the past. Your metals will shatter, your gunpowder will fizzle, and your armies will burn before a plasma. You should surrender now and spare your people the pain." The other commanders laughed and nodded, their sharp eyes gleaming with the certainty of victory. To them, the idea of facing humans in battle was not a challenge, but a sport, a hunt with an easy end. But the human envoy did not smile. He did not flinch. His eyes were cold as steel, and his voice steady. When he finally spoke, "You judged too soon." He said. The words cut through the laughter, leaving a brief silence in the chamber. The alien leaders exchanged glances, the meaning of the words unclear to them. Was it defiance, or was it foolish pride? One alien admiral tilted his head and asked, "What do you mean by that?" But the envoy said nothing more. He simply closed the presentation, turned his back, and walked toward the exit, his boots striking the polished floor in slow, steady steps. The guards watched him leave without moving, for no human could threaten their empire. When the door sealed behind him, the laughter returned, even louder than before. Some called the humans brave fools, others called them desperate prey, but all agreed the coming battle would be short. They spoke of wiping out human defenses in hours. They planned which cities to destroy first and which lands to strip for resources. They imagined their banners flying over every human capital. Their voices carried the confidence of predators that had never been denied their kill. Then a soft chime echoed in the chamber, the sound of an urgent transmission. One of the alien scouts appeared as a flickering hologram, his armor scratched, and his voice tense. "Great Council," he said, "we have detected a human formation moving into position near the contested zone." The alien admiral raised a brow and asked how many ships. The scout shook his head. "None, sir. This is a ground formation. Their forces are setting up along the edge of the valley." The commanders burst into laughter again, believing the humans foolish enough to face them without orbital support. But the scout continued, "There is something strange about their setup. They have long barrels made of metal lined in rows aimed directly at our forward units. They are not moving, they are simply waiting." The alien general smirked and traded amused comments, thinking these barrels were the primitive weapons from the envoy's presentation. Perhaps the humans wanted to show them in action before dying. Perhaps they hoped to scare the Empire with noise and sparks. Yet the scout's voice did not carry humor. His tone was uneasy. "Their soldiers are calm," he said. "They do not flinch. They are standing in the open, but with a kind of discipline we have not seen before. They move as if they know something we do not." The alien admiral waved a claw dismissively. "Our shields will handle whatever they throw," he said. "There is no need for concern." The scout hesitated before answering, "I do not think shields will stop what they have." The council chamber grew slightly quieter, some of the laughter fading as a few commanders noticed the tension in the scout's voice. They asked him to explain, but before he could, the hologram flickered again. Another scout joining the feed, his voice sharp and hurried the human commander, has given some kind of order. He said their weapons are lifting in a firing position. All barrels are locked on target. Their soldiers are steady, no movement, except for aiming. The alien warlord who led the invasion leaned forward, his eyes narrowing enough of this. He said, "Send in the first wave. We will crush them in minutes." The scout began to protest, but his transmission was cut short. The chamber lights dimmed. As the fleet shifted into battle readiness, the alien commanders grinned at each other, already picturing the victory reports that would follow. Far below on the surface, the human formation stood, ready, the valley wind brushing against their faces, their hands steady on the triggers. The alien forces advanced in perfect formation, plasma rifles glowing and armor shining under the twin suns above. But the humans did not retreat. They did not even speak. Only the human commander raised his hand, giving a silent signal, and the barrels moved in unison toward the heart of the alien lines. Back on the flagship, the alien council watched the live feed with eager smiles, none of them noticing the faint tremor in the ground, none of them realizing that in a few moments their laughter would be gone, replaced by something they had never felt before against any enemy. The alien fleet moved into position above the valley, their massive ships blotting out the light of one of the twin suns, their dark silhouettes casting jagged shadows across the land below. The air shimmered with heat from their thrusters as dropships began to descend toward the waiting human lines. The commanders aboard the flagship spoke with casual voices, giving orders as if this was nothing more than another routine conquest, their confidence unshaken by the primitive appearance of the enemy. Below to them, the outcome was already written in the stars. On the ground, the humans remained unmoving, their metal barrels glinting in the harsh sunlight, the wind rustling through the sparse grass of the valley floor. The alien troops landed in tight formations, their armor shining, their plasma rifles glowing with lethal energy. But there was something unusual in the air, a tension that even the alien soldiers could feel. It was in the way the humans stood, not crouched, not hiding, but in full view, their faces calm, their movements deliberate. From a flagship, a young alien officer leaned toward the warlord and asked permission to initiate a warning volley to break the human line. The warlord agreed. With a lazy gesture, the officer relayed the order, and the first row of alien troops took aim, their rifles charging with a deep hum that filled the valley. Moments later, a wave of blue plasma burst forward, scorching the ground and tearing through the air where the humans stood. But when the smoke cleared, the human formation was still there, untouched and unmoved. The alien commander narrowed his eyes, confused. His sensors showed the shots had been on target, yet the humans remained standing as if nothing had happened. There was no shimmering of shields, no sign of advanced armor, just men and women in simple gear, their weapons resting calmly in their hands. Before the alien troops could fire again, the human commander raised his hand and made a quick signal. The barrels of the human weapons tilted slightly, and the alien observers saw something strange, a faint ripple in the air around each barrel, as if the metal itself was trembling with barely contained force. The warlord watched the feed with mild curiosity until the first human shot was fired. There was no glowing beam, no flash of energy, only a single sharp crack like the snap of a whip. But the effect was immediate. An alien soldier in the front line fell without a sound, his armor pierced clean through, leaving a small hole in the chest plate. The warlord frowned, thinking it must be a lucky shot. But then the cracks multiplied, dozens, then hundreds each. One perfectly timed, the alien troops began to fall in rapid sequence, every impact punching through armor that should have been invincible. Panic rippled through the alien lines as their front ranks collapsed. Sensors struggled to track the projectiles. They moved too fast for standard targeting systems and left no energy signature for shields to block. The aliens fired back in desperation, but their shots went wild, the humans never breaking formation, every movement of their weapons precise and synchronized. On the flagship, the council erupted into a mix of shouts and disbelief. The warlord demanded an explanation. How could primitive metal defeat advanced composite armor? A senior tactician studied the footage frame by frame, his eyes narrowing in growing alarm. These are not ordinary projectiles, he said. They are moving at a velocity beyond our plasma. They do not dissipate. They tear through solid mass with brutal efficiency. The warlord dismissed him at first until another scout report came in. The humans are advancing, he said. Their line is moving forward without breaking rank, and they are reloading faster than we can fire. The alien officers felt the first hint of unease, their arrogance cracking under the weight of the impossible. The warlord ordered the aerial units to strafe the human position, but as the dropships approached, a series of loud booms echoed from the valley. Several of the ships burst into flames midair, their hulls torn apart by invisible strikes. The pilots never even saw the projectiles coming. One alien pilot managed to transmit a short burst of static-filled words before his ship spiraled into the ground. "It can hit us from anywhere." The human advance continued step by steady step, the valley floor littered with smoking alien armor, the sound of their weapons sharp and unrelenting. The alien troops tried to regroup, but each attempt was cut short by another wave of deadly accurate fire from the humans. Every shot seemed to find a weak point, every impact followed by another and another. Back in the council chamber, the mood had shifted completely. The laughter was gone, replaced by tense silence, only broken by the distant echoes of battle feed audio. The warlord stared at the display, his jaw tightening with each passing second. He had underestimated this enemy badly, but pride kept him from giving the retreat order. Instead, he ordered the deployment of their heavy assault walkers, massive machines bristling with weapons that had crushed every resistance before. The ground shook as the walkers descended, their long legs crushing the soil with each step, their cannons charging with blinding energy. The alien troops cheered, thinking the tide would turn, but the humans did not slow. They did not scatter. They simply shifted their aim. The first walker took 3 hits in quick succession, one to each leg joint and one to the central cockpit. In moments, it toppled into the dirt, its cannons dying with a hiss. The second walker met the same fate, and the third fell before it could even fire a shot. The alien forces began to falter, their formations breaking under the relentless human fire. The warlord slammed a clawed hand against the table and ordered the fleet to prepare orbital bombardment. But before the order could be sent, a new alert flashed on the main screen. Unidentified energy spikes detected in orbit above the battlefield. The warlord's eyes widened as he realized the humans had brought something else to the fight, something they had not shown in the envoy's presentation. The last image before the feed cut was of the human commander lowering his weapon and giving another silent signal. The alien council leaned forward, trying to see what would happen next, but the screen went black, replaced by a warning message across all systems. The alien flagship trembled as the strange energy spikes grew stronger. In orbit, the warlord stood frozen before the main screen, watching lines of red alerts race across every display. Their fleet sensors strained to lock on to the unknown sources, but the readings made no sense. There was no plasma signature, no antimatter core, no familiar pattern of any known weapon, just an unnatural surge that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat in the cold darkness above the planet. The human formation on the ground had stopped advancing, their weapons lowered, but their eyes fixed upward. The alien council realized too late that the real battle was not happening on the surface. The alien tactician shouted for the orbital fleet to raise shields, but the order came too slowly from the shadows of the upper atmosphere. Metallic shapes emerged, faint at first, then growing sharper as they descended. Their design was unlike anything the aliens had seen, each craft angular and without the smooth curves of alien warships, their hulls coated in a dull gray finish that reflected nothing, no heat, no light, almost as if they absorbed it. The warlord demanded firing solutions, but the fleet gunners cursed in confusion. The human ships did not appear on targeting systems, except for brief flickers when they moved too fast to track. Then the first strike came without warning. A thin trail of metal shards ripped through space like a storm of invisible knives. One alien cruiser shuddered as its armor split open, the shards passing through bulkheads as if they were paper. Fire and debris erupted into the void as the ship broke apart, the crew never having the chance to scream. A second and third cruiser fell in the same way. The alien fleet began a pull-back instinct, taking over despite the warlord's furious commands from the flagship bridge. The council tried to calculate the human weapon's nature, but the truth was terrifyingly simple. These were projectiles accelerated to impossible speed by rail systems of raw magnetic force. No glowing energy core, no plasma trail, no warning to intercept. By the time the alien sensors caught the movement, the shot had already hit and passed through On the valley floor, the human commander watched through a visor feed as the alien fleet above was torn apart piece by piece. His voice calm as he relayed new coordinates to the ships in orbit. They shifted position with surgical precision, every shot aimed at vital targets. Alien destroyers burst into clouds of molten fragments, their shields useless against the solid fury of kinetic impact. The warlord ordered all remaining ships to fire indiscriminately into orbit, their plasma lances cutting through the sky, but hitting nothing. The human craft moved like predators, striking from angles that defied prediction. One alien battleship fired its entire energy bank in a sweeping arc, only to be silenced by a single slug that pierced its reactor, turning it into a drifting corpse of steel. Panic spread through the alien crews as reports of catastrophic losses filled the comm channels. Some ships tried to retreat into deep space, but the humans seemed to anticipate every path, their slugs slamming into engines before the ships could reach jump speed. The alien flagship itself rocked violently as a near miss passed within meters, tearing away a section of its outer hull. The warlord steadied himself, gripping the edge of the command table, his mind racing for a counter that did not exist. Back on the ground, the alien troops who had survived the earlier firefight stared upward in disbelief. Their fleet, their invincible sky guardians, were being destroyed in minutes. The human soldiers stood motionless, their discipline unbroken, as if the battle above was merely the next step in a long-planned sequence. The alien infantry officers received no orders from command, only silence and static. The tactician finally turned to the warlord, his voice low and grim. "We cannot win this fight. Every moment we stay costs us ships and soldiers." The warlord's pride fought against the truth, but the evidence was undeniable. Still, he refused to say the word retreat. Instead, he gave one last order, a desperate command to unleash their experimental weapon, a planet-scale plasma beam that could scour the battlefield clean. It required enormous energy, but could vaporize anything in its path. Deep within the flagship, a massive cannon began to charge the air around it, bending with raw power. The crew moved with urgency, knowing this was their final chance to shift the battle. But high above, the humans had already detected the energy spike. One of their orbital craft repositioned, aligning with the flagship's weapon system before the beam could fire. A slug the size of a man tore through the cannons housing the magnetic force, so intense it ripped metal apart as if it were cloth. The weapon detonated inside the flagship, sending shockwaves through the massive vessel. The explosion lit up the sky over the valley. Alien soldiers looked up to see their command ship burning, pieces of it raining down through the atmosphere. The warlord was thrown to the floor, the bridge a chaos of fire alarms and collapsing supports. He tried to rise, but a second impact struck the flagship, breaking it in half. The ship's remains began to fall toward the planet, trailing smoke like a dying comet. On the ground, the humans began moving again, advancing toward the disorganized alien infantry. With the slow, steady pace of an unstoppable tide, the aliens fired weakly, their aim broken by fear. Their formations scattered, the human weapons cracked again and again, each shot deliberate, each strike final. In moments, the aliens began dropping their rifles, some raising their hands, others simply running into the hills. The human commander gave no sign of mercy. Their goal was clear, total removal of the threat. Their precision strikes continued, not fueled by rage, but by cold efficiency. The last alien armored unit attempted to flank from a ridge, but was cut down before it even reached firing range. In the distance, the burning remains of the alien flagship slammed into the side of a mountain, the ground shaking under the force of impact, dust, and debris, rising into the air like a final curtain on the alien invasion. Above the battlefield, the human ships slowed their fire, holding position as the surviving alien vessels fled into deep space. Those few who escaped carried with them the memory of a battle. They could not understand a battle where primitive weapons moved faster than light itself, and where an enemy they had mocked had dismantled their entire war machine in less than an hour. The alien survivors sent fractured messages to their homeworlds, warning them of a simple truth: the humans were not to be judged by the weapons they carried, but by the way they used them. The warlord lay, trapped beneath the wreckage of his own ship, his vision fading as the sounds of battle grew distant in his mind. He replayed the moment in the council chamber, when the human envoy had said you judged too soon, and for the first time in his long life, the warlord understood the meaning of those words. Smoke hung over the valley like a shroud, the air thick with the scent of scorched metal and earth. The human troops moved through the wreckage, their boots crunching over shards of alien armor, scattered like dry leaves in autumn. Above them, the orbital craft circled silently, their presence a quiet reminder that the fight could resume at any moment. The alien survivors who had fled into the hills were nowhere to be seen, but every soldier knew they were not gone, only hiding, waiting. The human commander stood on a ridge, scanning the distance through a scope. His jaw set, his eyes cold. His second-in-command approached with a report. The enemy had regrouped somewhere beyond the canyon pass, their remaining forces small but desperate. The commander listened in silence, then gave a single order: advance. Their mission was not over until no alien remained to threaten Earth or its allies. Far beyond the canyon, the alien warlord lay in a makeshift field tent, his body wrapped in binding mesh to hold shattered bones together. Medics worked quickly, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the destruction of his flagship. Over and over, the council was gone, the fleet scattered, yet his pride burned hotter than any wound he had suffered. The humans had humiliated him in front of his entire command structure, and that shame demanded blood. He called for his tactician, who entered with a bowed head. In grim news, the reinforcements from the outer rim were still days away, too far to join the fight. But a weapons transport had survived the orbital slaughter and carried something untested, something forbidden. The warlord's eyes narrowed as he demanded details. The tactician explained that it was a gravity distortion cannon capable of folding sections of terrain into nothingness. It was unstable, unpredictable, and had never been fired in atmosphere. But it was their last chance to turn the tide. The warlord ordered it prepared at once, no matter the cost, even if it destroyed the very ground they stood on. In the canyon, the human forces moved cautiously, the cliffs above casting long shadows across the winding path. Drones scouted ahead, their silent flight, scanning for heat signatures and energy spikes. One drone transmitted a strange reading deep within the pass, a pulsing gravitational anomaly unlike anything seen before. The commander frowned, knowing the aliens were desperate enough to try anything. He ordered the troops to spread out, using the rocks for cover. As they advanced, a low vibration began to hum through the ground. Stones rattled under their feet, and dust drifted down from the canyon walls. The anomaly grew stronger every second. Then, without warning, the earth in front of them seemed to vanish, as if scooped away by invisible hands. A massive crater formed in the blink of an eye, its edges glowing faintly from the strain of warped gravity. At the bottom lay twisted chunks of stone, bent like soft clay. The soldiers stared in shock as the air itself rippled within the crater, a second distortion forming, this time closer. One soldier was caught at the edge, pulled forward, as if by an unseen tide. His scream cut short when his body stretched unnaturally and disappeared into nothingness. The commander barked orders, pulling the unit back, but the distortions began appearing faster, each one tearing pieces of the canyon away. High on the ridge, the alien warlord watched through magnified lenses as medics, holding him upright. The cannon crew worked feverishly to redirect the weapon for a third shot, each blast draining its unstable core, but each one driving the humans farther back. He allowed himself a thin smile. For the first time since the battle had begun, he felt the balance shift. Yet the humans were not retreating in chaos. Instead, they moved with the same eerie discipline as before. Squads split apart, flanking the source of the distortions, under covering fire from the orbital ships above. One human vessel descended lower than any before, its rail cannons firing in precise bursts to clear alien infantry from the ridges. This forced the warlord's guard to focus on defense, buying precious moments for the human advance. The tactician shouted a warning to the warlord. The humans were closing in on the cannon position. The warlord roared for the crew to fire one last shot, a shot that would consume the entire canyon. The cannon's core began to glow, its gravitational waves so intense that the ground beneath it cracked. The crew struggled to keep it stable as arcs of raw energy leapt into the sky. In the shadows of the canyon wall, a human strike team crept closer, moving from rock to rock. Their leader carried a strange device, unlike the rail rifles they used before. It was small, cylindrical, and covered in reinforced plating. They reached the final ridge overlooking the cannon, the alien crew below, too focused on their weapon to notice the human presence. With a quick motion, the leader activated the device and hurled it toward the cannon. It landed at the weapon's base, and a pulse of blue light erupted, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. Every piece of machinery within its reach froze locked in place, as if time itself had stopped. The gravity distortion cannon went silent, its glowing core flickering and then dying. The alien crew stumbled backward in panic. The warlord's eyes widened in rage and disbelief as he realized the humans had brought an anti-field disruptor, a weapon that nullified the very forces his cannon relied on. The humans moved quickly, securing the position, their rifles cutting down the last defenders. The tactician grabbed the warlord by the arm, urging him to flee, but before they could retreat, a shadow fell across the ridge. The human orbital craft loomed above, lowering itself with precision. A voice echoed through an amplifier, "Surrender now, or be removed." The warlord clenched his fists, but saw no path to victory. His pride fought against the inevitable. Yet his forces lay broken, his weapon disabled, and his fleet scattered across the stars. The commander approached the warlord face to face. The two leaders locked eyes, neither speaking for a long moment, the silence broken only by the hiss of wind through the canyon. Then the commander spoke in a low voice, "This is the end for you. Leave this world and never return." The warlord said nothing, his glare promising that this was not over, before he turned and limped toward the last surviving transport ship, guarded by the few soldiers who still followed him. As the alien vessel lifted into the sky, the human troops began dismantling the gravity cannon, its remains to be studied and stored far from alien hands. The commander watched the ship vanish into the upper atmosphere, his thoughts already on the battles yet to come, for he knew this retreat was only temporary. The warlord's pride would not let this defeat rest, and somewhere in the cold void of space, plans for revenge were already forming. Far from Earth, on the outer edge of a dying star system, the alien warlord stood inside the command chamber of his new flagship, a vessel larger and darker than the one he had lost, its hull forged from the remnants of ancient war machines buried deep within his people's oldest battlefields. The chamber pulsed with a low red light, casting long shadows over the towering figures who stood at attention before him, each of them captains of the scattered fleets who had survived the human assault there. Armor scarred, their eyes filled with the weight of failure. The warlord's voice cut through the silence like a blade, reminding them of the humiliation they had suffered. The humans had not only destroyed their greatest weapons, but had turned the galaxy's perception of them upside down. Once feared as unstoppable conquerors, they were now whispered about as a fleet broken by a primitive species. The shame was unbearable, and the warlord vowed that such disgrace would be washed away in fire and blood. He spoke of a new plan, one that would not rely on brute force or grand battles, but on something far more dangerous and insidious. In the dark corners of the galaxy, there existed a place forbidden even to his kind, an ancient station built by a race long vanished into dust and legend. It was said to hold the memory core, a device capable of rewriting the very minds of those it touched, bending thought and will to its master's design. The warlord intended to find it, to wield it, and to use it on humanity until their leaders bowed willingly and their armies obeyed his. Every command his captains shifted uneasily, for such relics were said to carry curses, yet the warlord's conviction burned so fiercely none dared challenge him. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human commander stood in a secure war room deep beneath the surface, holographic maps of known alien positions shimmering before him. Intelligence reports suggested the warlord had not retreated into obscurity, but was gathering strength again somewhere in uncharted space. The commander's advisors debated possible targets. Some argued for fortifying the home system, others for hunting him before he could strike. Yet the commander sensed this was no simple military regrouping. The enemy was moving with purpose towards something unknown, and that made him more dangerous than ever. The commander ordered long-range scout ships to push deeper into alien territory, their mission to track the warlord's fleet and uncover his objective. One such scout, the Orion Spear, slipped past patrol lines under the cover of a drifting asteroid field. Its pilot, a quiet but skilled veteran named Hayes, navigated with steady hands, avoiding the sweeping sensors of alien pickets. For days, they chased fragments of energy signatures and encrypted transmissions until at last they found a trail leading into the Dead Star system where no living fleet had reason to go. The Orion Spear's sensors picked up faint signals of artificial construction orbiting a fractured moon. It was a station unlike any human or alien-designed jagged spires of metal twisting upward like frozen lightning its surface scarred. Yet still alive with faint power surges, Hayes transmitted the images back to command. But before he could pull away, a sudden wave of energy swept through his ship. His controls froze, lights dimmed, and every system went dark. He floated helpless as an alien cruiser emerged from behind the moon, its hull markings bearing the Warlord's crest. The Warlord's crew boarded, quickly dragging Hayes before their leader. The alien studied him with an expression halfway between contempt and curiosity, asking why a lone human had come so far. Hayes remained silent, only meeting his gaze with defiance. The Warlord laughed, not in mockery, but in something colder, as if amused by the bravery of prey before it was devoured. He ordered Hayes taken below to the station's core chamber, where the memory core awaited activation. The chamber itself was vast, a hollow sphere lined with shifting panels that seemed to move like liquid metal. In the center floated the memory core, a glowing orb of countless facets, each one reflecting visions of places and faces. Hayes could not recognize. The Warlord explained its power in slow, deliberate tones, how it could reach in the mind, strip away defiance, plant loyalty where none existed. He intended to test it on Hayes before using it on human leaders to prove that even the strongest could be bent. Hayes felt the core's pull as it hummed, a deep vibration through his skull. Images flashed before his eyes, memories twisted, reshaped. Yet deep inside, he clung to a single thought, a code phrase taught to all special forces in case of mental interference, a phrase that anchored the mind when all else was lost. Repeating it silently, he fought against the core's grip, his heartbeat slowing, his breathing steadying. The Warlord watched, expecting surrender, but instead saw resistance growing. On Earth, the commander received the last burst transmission from Hayes before his capture. The images of the station confirmed the worst. This was no ordinary weapon, but a relic from the galaxy's deep past. He assembled a strike force designed not for open battle, but for surgical insertion, their mission to destroy the station before the Warlord could bring the memory core to full power. 3 days later, the strike force emerged from slipspace just beyond the broken moon, their ships scattering to avoid detection. Stealth drones darting ahead. The alien fleet responded quickly, but the humans had planned for this, drawing the defenders into a false chase, while a single infiltration craft slipped through the debris field toward the station's docking bay. Inside, the infiltration team moved with quiet precision, disabling security systems and planting charges along the structural supports. In the core chamber, Hayes still fought against the pull, his mind fraying at the edges, when sudden tremors shook the station. The Warlord's attention snapped toward the sound of distant detonations, realizing too late that the humans had come for the relic. Alarms blared throughout the structure panels, buckling as explosions rippled along its outer ring. The infiltration team burst into the chamber, weapons raised, covering Hayes as they cut him free from the core's harness. The Warlord roared in rage, drawing a blade of dark metal unlike any human weapon. He charged through the chaos, clashing with the team's leader in a brutal melee, each strike ringing out in the vast chamber. Yet the humans fought with unity, forcing him back toward the core. One soldier, armed with a heavy charge, placed it at the base of the glowing orb as sparks rained down from ruptured conduits. With a final shove, the team disengaged and dragged Hayes toward the exit. The Warlord lunged, but was thrown back by a concussive blast. As the charge detonated, the memory core's glow flared blinding white, then collapsed inward, swallowing itself. In a burst of light and silence that ripped through the station, the infiltration craft escaped, just as the structure began to break apart, the alien fleet scattering in confusion. From the safety of their ship, Hayes looked back at the dying station, knowing the Warlord had survived somehow, but the relic was gone, and with it his greatest chance for a bloodless victory. Yet deep in Hayes's mind, he carried the image of the Warlord's face in that moment, not of defeat, but of cold, unbroken resolve. In the black space between galaxies where no stars shone and no planets drifted, the warlord sat alone in the shadow deck of a hidden carrier, his armor still marked with burns from the battle. At the ancient station, around him, the faint hum of engines was the only sound. The memory core was gone, its power scattered to nothing, yet the loss did not bring despair to his mind. Instead, it burned away the last trace of hesitation and left a plan. Forged in pure fury, he had learned something in that defeat, a truth more dangerous than any relic. The humans were not only stubborn, they were willing to burn everything to stop him. They would not bow through fear. They would not surrender through pressure. They would fight until the last breath. This meant that the only way to break them was not with single strikes or traps, but by turning their own strength into weakness, by making them fight so hard that the weight of their own victories crushed them from within. His fleet had been reduced to fragments, but each fragment now moved as a ghost through uncharted sectors, striking at supply lines, vanishing before enemy fleets could react. No grand battles, no need for overwhelming firepower. Each strike was a needle meant to bleed humanity. Slowly, every convoy destroyed, every colony made to vanish would force the humans to spread their fleets thinner and thinner. The warlord wanted them tired, wanted them chasing shadows until their commanders made mistakes born from exhaustion and fear. On Earth, the commander stood over a wide table of shifting holograms, watching as reports of new attacks came in from opposite sides of human territory. It was a pattern that made no sense to the officers around him. No clear target, no single front. Yet the commander saw the outline of a trap. The warlord was trying to stretch them beyond breaking point. The only answer was to match his shadow war with one of their own. He ordered the creation of a hidden response fleet made up of ships that officially did not exist, crewed by soldiers trained to vanish from records, and from memory. Their mission was to hunt the hunters, to trace the invisible lines between the warlord's strikes and find the heart of his movement. The fleet was named the Silent Edge, and it began its work at once. In the dark between stars, the Silent Edge tracked rumors, whispers, and faint trails of heat left in the wake of alien engines. One ship, the stealth cruiser Black Wave, followed a chain of such clues into a drifting graveyard of old war wrecks. Here, the light of distant galaxies barely touched the twisted hulls, floating in silence. The crew scanned the wrecks and found signs of recent salvage. Someone was taking weapons and armor from ships that had been dead for centuries. The captain of the Black Wave guessed the warlord was building something new, something different from his lost fleets. They followed the trail until they found a hidden forge station wrapped in the remains of shattered asteroid. Huge robotic arms pulled metal from the wrecks, shaping it into strange hull designs. The station's defenses were minimal, but the captain did not strike. Instead, he sent a coded burst to the commander, knowing that patience could lead to a far greater catch than one. Destroyed forge. Far away on the hidden carrier, the warlord stood with his engineers as they showed him the first of the new weapons. These were not ships of massive guns or towering armor. They were shaped like shards of night, built for speed and for cutting through space with sudden bursts of power. They could not hold a battle line, but they could tear through engines and leave a capital ship adrift. In seconds, the warlord named them the Spearborn and ordered hundreds more to be built, even if it meant stripping every old wreck in the graveyard. Back on Earth, the commander read the Black Wave's report and knew they could not allow the Spearborn to enter service. He called for a plan, not to attack the forge directly, but to make the warlord bring his new fleet into the open, where they could be trapped. The Silent Edge began feeding false data into the alien network's data that suggested a massive human weapons convoy was moving through a lonely sector near the edge of a black hole. The bait was taken. The warlord sent his first Spearborn wing to strike the convoy, unaware that the convoy did not exist and that every star in that sector hid human warships in silent running mode. When the Spearborn arrived, they cut through the empty decoys in seconds, but before they could retreat, the human trap closed in from all sides. The battle that followed was unlike any the warlord had fought. The humans did not aim to destroy outright. They aimed to cripple, disabling engines and drives to capture the Spearborn hull so they could study them. The warlord realized the trick too late and ordered a retreat, but the black hole's gravity made escape slow. Several of his new ships were pulled into human boarding range and taken intact. Even in defeat, the warlord smiled for the first time in months because now he understood the depth of human cunning. He saw that they were capable of deception on a scale equal to his own, and that made them more dangerous, but also more predictable, for every mind that could weave such traps could also be drawn into one. He returned to his carrier and gathered his captains, telling them of a new phase in the war that would let the humans taste the power of victory and let them believe they had broken his ability to strike. Then, when their guard lowered and their fleets shifted back to defense, he would launch a blow that would not aim for their ships or their armies, but for the heart of their civilization. His target was not Earth itself, but the network of relay stations and data hubs that tied all human worlds together. Without them, fleets could not coordinate, colonies could not call for help, and trade would collapse. He would strike in dozens of places at once, leaving humanity blind and isolated. Then he would return to finish what he had started. In the war room on Earth, the commander looked at the captured Spearborn and thought of the warlord somewhere in the dark, still moving, still plotting. He knew the next move would come soon, and it would not be a simple raid. The war was no longer about territory or weapons. It had become a duel between two wills, each one trying to see further ahead than the other, each one knowing that a single wrong step could end everything. The night side of Earth was quiet as the commander stood on the roof of the central defense tower, looking at the stars. The lights of cities glow below, but his mind was not on beauty. He knew that somewhere out there the warlord was moving his fleets toward a strike unlike any before, and if they failed to stop it, the human worlds would go dark one by one. Deep in the void, the warlord's hidden armada slid through the black. The new plan, ready, each fleet wing carried orders to strike the relay stations that connected all human systems. The attacks would be simultaneous, so that no distress call could be sent before it was too late. Each strike team had a precise window, no longer than a heartbeat. In cosmic terms, the warlord's voice echoed across the secure channels, telling his captains that after this day, the humans would not fight as one people anymore. They would be scattered and easy to break. On Earth, the Silent Edge had been watching the patterns of small enemy raids that seemed random, but the commander had guessed they were testing defenses around the relay network. Now the data was clear. The enemy was about to move. The commander gathered every captain of the hidden fleet and told them the truth. They could not defend every station, but they could create the illusion that they could if they guessed the warlord's real target and met him there. The trap began with false signals sent through unsecured frequency signals that spoke of a massive human summit at Relay Station Prime, the largest and most important hub in the network. In reality, Relay Station Prime had been evacuated hours earlier, its halls empty except for automated gun platforms and heavy shields waiting for the first sign of an attack. The rest of the human fleet positioned itself in the shadows of nearby moons and asteroids, ready to collapse on the enemy the moment they reveal themselves. The warlord scouts reported the perfect opening. Relay Station Prime seemed underdefended, only a small escort force drifting in lazy patrol. The warlord took the bait and ordered his main force to jump in. His ships erupted from the void like a tide of black steel, Spearborn slicing ahead to shred the outer defenses. The smaller human escort fought hard, but fell back just as planned, pulling the enemy deeper toward the heart of the station. In the silence of space, the commander gave the order, and the hidden fleets surged forward, railguns and missile batteries lighting the dark. In a storm of metal, the warlord's ships were suddenly surrounded, the black shards of the Spearborn darting and weaving as they tried to break through human lines. Every explosion painted the battle in flashes of white and gold. The warlord himself stood on the bridge of his flagship, giving rapid orders to concentrate fire and carve a path out, but each route was blocked before it could open. For a moment, it seemed the trap would close perfectly, but then the warlord unleashed his final card, a set of massive siege weapons hidden within the hulls of his heavier ships. Their cores glowed and unleashed waves of gravitational energy that crushed and twisted anything caught too close. Several human ships broke apart under the sudden pressure, opening a hole in the blockade. The warlord drove his flagship through it, using the Spearborn to shield his escape path. The commander saw this and knew the warlord was not fleeing in panic. He was heading for the real target, a secondary relay far beyond the battle one, that if destroyed would sever the communication chain entirely Without hesitation, the commander left the fight in the hands of his captains and took the Silent Edge's fastest cruisers. In pursuit, the chase burned across empty space, both sides pouring every ounce of speed into their engines, stars flashing past like frozen sparks in the dark. They caught up near the relay's orbit, the station floating like a fragile jewel, its surface glittering with sensor dishes, and calm towers. The warlord's flagship was already powering its siege core to fire one strike. Would end it all, the commander ordered every ship to focus on disabling the core before it could release. Its energy beams tore across the distance, but the warlord's shields held just long enough for the countdown to reach its final moments. Then, in a move no one had predicted, the commander drove his own flagship straight into the warlord's shields. The impact overloaded them for a heartbeat long enough for a swarm of human strike craft to pour in and hammer the siege core until it shattered in a bloom of molten light. The blast rocked both fleets, the commander's ship crippled and spinning the warlord's flagship, venting fire and smoke into the void. In the wreckage, the two leaders looked at each other across the chaos, the warlord's eyes burning with cold fury, the commander steady and unbroken. There were no words, but the message was clear: neither would stop, neither would ever truly surrender. The war was not over, but humanity had survived the strike, and the network still stood whole. The warlord pulled his remaining ships into hyperspace, retreating into the black, where no human could follow. The Silent Edge limped back to friendly space, carrying the battered commander, whose gamble had saved the relay worlds across human territory. Lit their skies with celebration, not for a final victory, but for the proof that even in the darkest hour they could match the cunning and strength of any foe. The commander stood once more on the roof of the defense tower. Weeks later, the stars above unchanged, yet they felt different to him. Now, he knew the warlord was out there planning his return, but he also knew that humanity was ready. The enemy had learned to fear their so-called primitive weapons, and now he would learn to fear their. Well, the commander whispered into the night a promise that the next time they met, it would be the last. Far beyond human space, the warlord sat in silence in the shadow deck of a new hidden base, already shaping the next phase of his war. He no longer underestimated his enemy. If anything, he respected them more. But respect did not mean mercy. The duel between them would continue until one stood over the ashes of the other in the cold void between the stars.